Hello folks, it is time for some more hobby nightmares. I hope you all had a wonderful New Year's Eve. This won't be a super long one. I was thinking about not doing a hobby nightmares at all today, but I got an extra half an hour, so I thought, you know what? I'll use some of that to jump in and do some hobby nightmares. Why not? So, let's start our hobby nightmares today with Jabba. And he says, "Hi North, Jabba here. Hope everything's going well and you had a lovely Christmas and a wonderful New Year's." Yeah, it was quiet. It was quiet. Do you know when people say, oh, it's quiet, you know? Well, this was actually a quiet Christmas. We didn't do much. I didn't want to. I'd been ill all December, so I was pretty much done with it. Do you know what I mean? I thought I'd write in with a hobby nightmare that happened some years ago. I didn't play D&D a lot. I had a few small games that only lasted a session, so I wanted to get my feet stuck in with a more permanent campaign. I tried to have a look online, but couldn't really find anything, so I went to one of those websites where people book group events. I can't remember the name, but I also, I think if I do find the name and say it, people will know which group I'm referencing when in this hobby nightmare. Alright, well, you know, you be act with caution. I always say that in hobby nightmares. If you're in doubt, either tell me at the start of the email, right at the start, some provisos or things you want to talk, you'd want to talk about or you don't want me to mention, but always err on the side of caution when approaching talking in public about things, right? Anyway, as far as I can remember, I contacted the head person who organises everything and asked if they had any more permanent campaigns I can be a part of. And from what I can remember also, he said yes, and said I was free to come down. The day comes and I do go down. Sorry. I can see a few people have arrived at the pub, so I wait for a bit before deciding to introduce myself. In a pub? Very nice. D&D in a pub? I wouldn't mind doing that, that'd be awesome. I explain that I'm here for the Dungeons and Dragons, and I haven't really properly played before. The person who I talk to is probably one of the nicest women I've ever met in my life. She asked me what I was doing, sat down with me for 30 minutes, and built my character with me. I was absolutely dumbstruck by how lovely this woman was. She was an absolute angel. I can't think of literally anyone from memory who has ever taken the time out of their day to take me through making a character build or something so intrinsic like this. People like this is why I absolutely love the hobby, and I hope I'm like this if I ever need an intro or to give an intro to somebody else. I decided to make the most uppity, upper-class, snotty high elf I could think of. He was equipped with a rapier, because why not? Let's make him as posh as possible, and have him be very quick. It was brought up to level 6. After taking me through a character, she was super courteous and let me get on with things from there. The pub was getting packed, but it didn't seem like there was a game I could go to. I asked to see if the organiser was anywhere, and I was told he was upstairs. I go upstairs and introduced myself to him, letting him know we'd messaged back and forth before, and if there was an ongoing campaign I could be a part of. From memory, he struggled a bit, as if he hadn't expected the query, though I was sure he had messaged about it beforehand. I want to be fair on him and say perhaps there was a miscommunication along the way. The only thing I can say is I'm usually specific when requesting things so there isn't any confusion. He recommends I go to a table downstairs, and when I go, I can see the game is starting up. I introduce myself to the DM and explain I had been instructed to come down from the main organiser upstairs. I gave him the character sheet I had set up based on the lady's recommendation when we went through it. His response was very disappointing, to say the least. And I quote, your character's too complicated. You're gonna have to make a new one, unquote. I'd sat down but was a bit dumbstruck as what to say. I tried to explain that this character had already been set up, but the guy was persistent that I make a new one. There was no reception in the pub, so I couldn't access the app to make a new character. All I could do was sit in silence for a few minutes wondering what to do. Eventually, I just said I was going to head off and left the pub, but coming out of it, I thought I should probably say something. At the time, I had a bit of a golden rule, which was, if something happened that was unfair, it was compulsory for me to say something about it. I had a long history of being bullied and abused, so I made it a rule that I had to call out a person when it was necessary to do so. Good lad. Good lad. I like this. Alright? I like this. There is somebody mentioned in it was a YouTube comment on one of my videos the other day. Do you know what? I'm gonna get it up now. It was a YouTube comment, and I thought it was great. I thought it was great about standing up for yourself, right? And I think, if I remember correctly, it is this one. Let me have a little look-see here. Yes, it is. Okay. It is from Jens Bleffer. Anyway, I'm going to read it verbatim, okay? I'm going on 1-2, as this is something I've noticed a lot with nerds, and I'm one of you. I had to learn this myself. Stand up for yourself is not some hollow life lesson from a cheesy 1980s high school movie. It is one of the most important things you need to be able to do as a person. A literal life skill you need to learn, and this goes both for men and women. I've seen geeks firsthand where the very words stand up for yourself, get out of your comfort zone, or even thinking about self-confidence are triggering to them because they feel like they just can't be that person, but they can and they need to. It's so important to be able to do this. Don't be an argumentative person. Don't be one of those annoying contrarians who are out for a conflict, but whatever you do, do not go through life as one of these ultra-meek people who are legitimately afraid of any sort of confrontation or conflict, to the extent where you sit back and take it if another person is walking all over you or those around you. It is not a personality trait, it is a flaw, which will impact your relationships, your friendships, you'll be stunted in your career, and your entire social life will suffer. We see it in these very hobby nightmares all the time. Seriously, North, if you read this comment, you could probably do a video essay on this stuff. I'd easily say 60+% of these accounts are preventable by the OP or other people in the situation saying, mate, stop doing that shit. In nightmare after nightmare, the problem player keeps acting out, while the narrator and everybody else just retreats into their shell and says nothing. It's frustrating and infuriating. Don't let the bullies win without even trying. They don't deserve it. Probably one of the best comments I've ever gotten. So, Jenza Bleffer, whatever your name is, thank you very much for sending that in. And that's exactly what you're doing here, right? You're taking yourself to account and saying, no, I'm going to talk about this. This is annoying, right? Good for you, man. Good for you. All right. In hindsight, based on what I know now, it depends. Sometimes you need to approach things diplomatically. Sometimes you can ignore or skirt issues because it's simply not worth it. And sometimes you can call something out without being confrontational. I decided to go back in and walked up to the table. I just said to the guy in front of everybody that he'd made me delete my character and I didn't appreciate it. The guy's response was simply, well, I don't get paid to do this. Great. You don't get paid to do a hobby you want to do? Why are you even doing this? It's such a poor excuse, making for being a DM and creating an environment people don't want to play in. If you can just make people delete their characters before the game's even started. I ended up not going back to D&D again after that. I understand that my sitting was an impromptu one. However, I did clarify beforehand that I was coming because I wanted to be part of a permanent campaign. So I'm not sure what else I could have done. I'm not sure what I would need to do if I ever wanted to go back to it. Do you have any advice for finding a group to sit with for a D&D campaign? Cheers, Jabba. Alright, so I think, whilst you are right to, like, go and, you know, absolutely be annoyed with that person, I also think there's been a bit of a miscommunication here. This is what happens when nerds are asked to, be normal. I know that sounds weird, but if you're organising something like this, you need to be talking to everybody around you and making sure that they understand, what your needs are and you understand what their needs are and blah, 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 right? You need to communicate. This is nerds not being able to communicate. And it's ended up in something like this, and I'm very sorry that it did. But that's where we are, right? It's annoying, but there we are. So no, I don't think there's anything else you could have done, really. I think you did the right thing. You called it out. You said, hey, man, that's not fair. And at least you got to leave. Like, here's the thing. Guys, just remember, what this guy did, if he didn't go back in there and call it out, he would be the one living with that mental baggage. Do you know what I mean? He'd be the one living with that knowledge of, I really should have said something there, but I didn't, right? Now he said something, he got it out of the system, it's in the open, Everybody knows how everybody feels, and he can move on with his life, right? He can compartmentalize this and shove it away because he's said his piece, said what he needed to say, and he's gone. Absolutely no problem there. In terms of finding a group, yeah, don't go to a group that is already in full swing, man. It's elementary stuff, but it is true. Like if you're a beginner, find a beginner group. That's what you look for, a beginner group. You look for other people who are starting in the hobby. I also would highly recommend not starting with Dungeons and Dragons if you want to roleplay. D&D these days isn't a role-playing game. It's basically, let's all climb on chandeliers and try and seduce dragons. It's amateur theatre. You know what I mean? It's not role-playing. There's a difference. There is a difference between acting and role-playing. Okay. Black Lodge Games did an amazing video on this back in the day. I really do recommend their channel, Black Lodge Games. Go and look them up. They're really, really cool. Anyway, they did a video on acting and role-playing and how they're different. And they did this scene where Marlon Brando in a streetcar named Desire is talking to this woman in a flat, right? And she is very much in the 50s, 60s. Oh, how awful. Oh, dear. Oh no. I'm shocked now. And she's almost looking at the camera, right? She's acting because she believes there's an audience there to act to. Because she's a theatre-trained actor, even though she's in a movie. And it comes across as really fake, right? And cringe, really. If you did that at the tabletop table, you know what I mean? If you did that at the tabletop, it would be kind of cringe. And most D&D players act that way. They act like they're in a fucking amateur dramatics class, and it's lame, right? Marlon Brando isn't acting. He is that character. He pretends he is that person and just acts that way. That's what he does. He just is that person now. He is role-playing. That's what Marlon Brando is doing. He's not really acting. He is the character. It's a very big thing that Ian McKellen said. Listen, what I do as an actor is, if you want to be a good actor, you need to, and I quote, pretend to be other people. You're not acting. You're role-playing. That's what role-playing is. And if you want to role-play, don't play D&D. I'm not saying the game is antithetical to role-playing. I'm saying the community is antithetical to role-playing. Most of the people you come across in D&D are there to min-max characters and act. Do amateur dramatics. Because they've watched too much fucking Critical Role, right? Go and play another game. I highly recommend Vampire the Requiem. I've recently been going through that. It's an amazing game. Right? I highly recommend that. There are many, many, many games out there that you can go and play with beginners groups that you can go and be a part of. Okay, so yeah, head out there and have a little look. Let's go on, shall we? With who are we going with now? You've not given me another name to use, so I'm going to use Vic. All right. All right. He says, "Hello again, North. I hope you're doing well and are having a great weekend. You said you didn't much like Christmas in one of your episodes, so I'd like to wish you a happy new year filled with luck and low on stress. It's me, Nick, with another story of Jimmy's D&D group and the two rivals who keep ruining each other's good time." Oh yeah, I loved this last time. I'm glad to see I remembered your name properly. Alright, I noticed that you read my story and I'm happy that you seem to like it. I have another one for you. It's a bit longer this time, so feel free to skip over some of the parts that might be a bit too rambly. I sometimes tend to overindulge when I write. This is yet another tale of our party being stupid idiots and not being nice to each other. Again, remember what I said before about amateur dramatics and people wanting to min-max? Alright, remember, this is D&D we're talking about now. I realise that this sort of D&D thing isn't quite your style. You're more into grim, dark, and sort of grounded stuff, but most of these stories are from us being kids and having goofy ideas about what is cool. Don't feel sorry for any of us in this story. We were dumb and don't deserve sympathy. Cheers, man. Especially Chuck. This story is about him being a bit too much of a spotlight hog. If you don't recall our cast of characters, I'll refresh your memory. Jimmy, our dungeon master with a big superiority complex. Chuck, a fat guy who believes everybody else is out to get him and would rather stay at home than be here, this time playing an assassin-style rogue. Richard, a porn-addicted class clown who was super into League of Legends, this time playing a witch doctor-inspired wizard, and me. I myself, still a teenager at this stage, still kind of dumb, but by this point, I was slowly getting cured from my video game addiction by joining scouts and going on camping trips. Also, at this point, I was no longer the new guy in the D&D group, and after having experienced what playing with the boys was like, I decided to make a more appropriate character. This time, I'm playing an actual Neanderthal. Literally. 3.5 D&D had a supplement called Frostborn, pictures for reference attached, with which you can play an Unga Bunga man. I love that. Right, I'm not going to read the unrelated rant because it's unrelated. Alright, so. Our session that leads up to this nightmare began like so. Alright. I'm gonna use some of your pictures here because you have some cool ones, I think, of your D&D books from back in the day. Let's have a look. Isn't that cool? Was it Frostburn? Yeah, Frostburn. It's pretty cool. There's something magical about old-style D&D books. Do you know what I mean? I remember back in the day when D&D was this magical thing. 3.5 was like the golden age of that, where it was this unknown magical thing that you read up on. It was like, ooh, you know, one of them things. Now it's all about like Mexican orcs and shit. Not really my thing. Anyway, part 1. We are awesome. Our party was travelling on the road and got ambushed by bandits. The poor idiots thought they could rob our fancy 4-horse-drawn coach that Chuck had stolen in a previous session, thinking that we were rich merchants. We absolutely destroyed them. It wasn't even a close fight. Richard's wizard climbed on top of the coach so he could be out of the way of melee attacks and got a clear view of the battlefield. Then he cast some kind of ice magic which froze a couple of the bandits solid. It was awesome to picture him up there with his shamanic robes and suddenly turning a bright warm day into a snowstorm. Chuck's character leaped out of the driver's seat, daggers flashing from hidden places. He slid on the ice a bit but got behind one of the miscreants that had escaped the snow's wrath and backstabbed him. The bandit folded over in pain and agony. Me, playing Bauk, I'm guessing you're the Neanderthal, emerged from the swanky interior of the coach, shattering the bandits' expectations and about to shatter their spines. Surely they pictured that they would be robbing a lord or lady cowering inside, but what came out was a large, hairy ape man instead. I picked one of the frozen solid ones and threw him at the heads of the others, breaking the poor sod in two and pinning one of the bandits under the heavy ice. Some of the bandits slipped on the ice and once prone, Chuck gained advantage on his attacks and delivered incredible amounts of damage. We were badasses. When we got to the town, we became morons once again. Part 2. We are indeed morons. Our fight with the bandits had slowed us down a bit, so when we got to the local inn, it was already night time and we settled in for an evening of heavy drinking. Richard, being sex-obsessed as always, decided to hit on all the women in the inn. This is the thing, right? Okay, here's the thing. Whenever somebody does this in one of my campaigns, if they ever do, I'm going to hit on every female character in the inn. I ban them. I'm being serious. It's happened twice. Right? It's a banning or a talking to. It's like, mate, because you don't have the balls to approach a woman in real life, that does not mean you get to use my role-playing campaign as your little fantasy box where you get to actually be a man with balls for a change and talking to women. No, you don't get to do that here. Go out in the real world and practice. Okay, but this is not the place to do it. It just ain't. This ain't the place to do it. It's a stern talking to if I know you. If I don't, I ask you to leave. I don't do stuff like that. It's weird. I'm a dude, by the way. If you're a straight man, you want to roleplay some, like, sex with me? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, no, go away. Go away. Go and find an actual woman. Alright? No. Richard, being sex-obsessed, as always, decided to hit on all the women in the inn. Cringe. My character Bauk immediately saw that there were no fat women or orcs, so he decided to make friends with the local drunks and arm wrestle, while Chuck's character was on a mission to extract as much gold as he can from these poor fools. Him and I worked together. Bauk distracted, Chuck's character pilfered. The interactions we were having with the NPCs were pretty cringe, all things considered, and everything was going smoothly until our Dungeon Master Jimmy role-played how a drunk got a little too chummy with Bauk. He called him a big idiot and gently slapped him on the back. Bauk doesn't like being called an idiot, but of course took this to be just a bit of banter, so with a huge dumb grin on his face, he grabbed a stool and smashed the drunk in the head with it, breaking the seat to pieces as well as the poor man's head, probably. That started the bar fight. To be honest, I don't remember much of the actual fight. It was a lot less cool than the encounter before, because I think Jimmy was rushing us a bit. What I do recall is Richard casting Fly on himself and getting the hell out of Dodge. Bauk having the time of his life, which means he was having too much fun to even activate the Barbarian's rage, and Chuck taking things way too far by pulling a knife and stabbing some old man in the kidney because he caught him with his hand in his pocket. Because of the escalation to murder, eventually the town militia showed up and started beating people's heads in, at which point Bauk was pretty much caught. I played the idiot so well, the cops decided my character was too dumb to have been the one who started it and said that they would let him go. I was losing my shit as we were all laughing out loud. Jimmy played a confused police interrogator duo of good cop, bad cop, but the good cop was getting progressively more and more annoyed, while the bad cop discovered that Bauk and him were kind of kindred spirits. They both liked watching the game, fat women, and beating up people. At the end of the interrogation, the bad cop invited Bauk to join the force, but I had to decline for the sake of his adventuring career. Chuck had managed to sneak away and was committing yet another string of small-time robberies, but after he got caught the second time, he decided to run for it. Richard decided that his weird-looking shaman would visit the brothel because, as I mentioned before, our boy has a porn addiction in real life. Up until that point, the atmosphere around Jimmy's coffee table was jovial and light. Dude, if there's a brothel in the town, why are you hitting on all the people in the inn? Let's go to the oh, never mind. Part 2.5. Out of the game. The fun was enhanced by some of Jimmy's mum's whiskey and Baileys from their fancy drinks cabinet. This being one of the rare times we played at his nice apartment. We took full advantage of the amenities. Yes, we were all teenagers. Yes, we were all drinking. We were smoking cigars as well. I bet you that some of your students are doing that right now at this moment, and if they're not, come to Eastern Europe and see how we live. You'd be drinking and smoking too. I'm having some butterbeer right now because it's winter. What are you drinking? A cup of Yorkshire tea. Thank you very much. Very nice. Butterbeer for the Eastern Europeans. It's just a continent of hobbits, isn't it? It just is. It's just a continent of hobbits over there. Anyway. Part 3, the solo adventure. Our party of misfits got reunited eventually, and rather than risking being recognised by the patrons of the previous inn, we decided to go to a different one. Richard was disappointed they didn't get to have sex, but we didn't think he had a chance to begin with, as our DM Jimmy never did sex scenes in his games anyway, so we told him to stop moaning about it. Dude, this guy needs to get a fucking life. I'm serious. I don't know. Even for like an 18-year-old, this is weird. This is strange. At the other inn, we didn't do any interactions. We decided to go straight to bed. This is where the nightmare begins. Chuck was still unhappy that he didn't get to make a lot of gold while our characters were asleep. He snuck out of the window to go around town and do some robberies. North, I cannot explain to you how bored me and Richard were. The whole next hour consisted of just Chuck and Jimmy playing whilst me and Richard were sitting quietly and drinking because we were asleep, quote unquote. Jimmy didn't like it when we talked out of the game at his table, so he wanted us to be quiet and just watch them. I can't really blame him. Usually all the arguments and PvP between Richard and Chuck broke out because they would bicker like children out of game, discussing optimal plays and whose character is cooler, or heckling each other when they failed. But this was really boring. Chuck kept going to a place, breaking in, sneaking about, taking some items, sneaking out, going to the next place. It was a string of cat burglaries one after the other, and nothing exciting or challenging was even happening. It was like watching somebody playing a generic thief missions in Skyrim. Mind you, this was in an age where smartphones did exist, but neither me nor Richard had any, or we couldn't even browse social media. Alright, fair enough. So we just kept boozing, smoking. I got my English homework out and started solving some problems, and then drawing pictures in my notebook, which, now I think about it, is pretty rude. Surely at least 10 times worse than being on my phone, but it also speaks to just how long this solo session lasted, because I was able to solve exercises and then actually draw when I'd finished. Part 4. The beginning of the end. When so much time had passed with us doing nothing, Richard decided, you know what, fuck this, and told Jimmy he wants his character to wake up and do something. Jimmy countered with, you can't just wake up, you're sleeping. Dude, I'd leave. At this point, I'd be like, alright, I'm gonna head out. I'm done. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're literally just like, no, you can't play. You know, we're doing cat burglaries now, but don't actually do anything. You know, dude, no. Yeah, but I just want to do shit. This is bullshit. We're just sitting here in silence, Richard said. Yeah, I chimed in unhelpfully. No, you guys are asleep, Chuck argued. Besides, my character is the only sneaky one. You're going to ruin everything by being loud and stupid. After a couple of minutes of discussion, Chuck was convinced that me and Richard were just going to ruin his fun, and we were doing this on purpose. To be honest, it rubbed me the wrong way that this guy had suddenly become the protagonist of a solo thief adventure, but I could not articulate this at the time because, you know, Whiskey had started talking. And Mr. Whiskey was mad. Guys, Mr. Whiskey is always mad. Alright? Don't try not to drink whiskey. Especially if you've got, like... Okay, men in my family can't drink whiskey. We end up fighting. Like, we can't drink whiskey. It's just not a thing we can do, right? So Richard and I kept arguing with the Dungeon Master. At one point, we both looked at each other in that moment. We formed a wordless understanding to fuck up whatever Chuck was doing on purpose. I promised to Jimmy that I wasn't going to do anything and that I was just bored and wanted to have something to do. Richard got real quiet and let me do the talking. I convinced Jimmy to at least let our characters wake up so we can get a couple of minutes of play in between Chuck's solo stealth missions. The moment he agreed, he sealed the session's fate and the clock started ticking. Like a monster truck heading towards a row of parked cars, me and Richard were about to steer this bitch towards destruction. The countdown to another PvP instance had begun. Oh, I'm invested. I'm invested now. Alright, part 5, the end. Immediately, as our characters woke up, Richard and I pretended to be looking for Chuck's character, saying things like, oh no, our friend and or possibly brother, where did he go? He might be in trouble. We need to find him. Let's go look. I can only imagine that this Chuck guy is like the vein in his forehead's like throbbing right now. Right. Richard cast flying on himself and started to patrol the sky, while Bauk headed downstairs to the street level. But Jimmy was clever. He knew what the hell we were up to. As soon as my character was down the stairs, he said that there is a fuscular half-orc woman drinking at the bar. I'm guessing you meant muscular. Unless that's, you know, fuckable but muscular. Fuscular. I don't know. Balk's 2 neurons activated, so I roleplayed him grunting with excitement as he immediately abandons his friends to go and chat up what must have looked like a monster to any sane person, but a potential wife to the Neanderthal. Our conversation was hilarious, but didn't last very long. Richard had turned himself into an intercontinental ballistic reefing missile, and he was flying at supersonic speed somehow. I think he also cast haste on himself, so he can search the town that much faster to locate and destroy Chuck's fun. Jimmy was switching the spotlight between them and Chuck, and was making his way to the mayor's house to rob it. Richard metagamed and stated that he wants to look at the mayor's house. Okay, alright. There are certain... I know you said don't feel sorry for any of you, and I don't, right? because you were countering this guy being an arsehole by being an even bigger arsehole. So, yeah, I don't feel sorry for any of you. And Jimmy, of course, argued against him doing that, and so Chuck, at this point, and so did Chuck. At this point, I didn't give a shit, so I wasn't paying attention. I decided to boot up Jimmy's Xbox 360, and I started looking through his extensive collection of video games. The guys somehow found each other near the town centre, and Richard started bombarding Chuck's rogue with spells. Of course, in-game, this absolutely made no sense, and Jimmy started yelling in outrage as the two of them were often once again killing each other. Yeah, dude, like... So basically, for no reason, the character just goes out of his way to start lobbing spells at an ally. Alright. Part 6. Master Chief saves our evening. While the other guys were having a passive-aggressive verbal battle, I could hear Jimmy getting more and more exhausted. I think he was calling for an end to the session at that point, and I don't blame him. Why waste time wrangling the chimps when you could just quit? I still didn't care. It was at this point that I located what I was looking for, and the object that saved our gaming light. Motherfucking Halo 3. Oh yeah, baby. This game had a 4-player split-screen mode, and guess what? We were 4 nerds. I hooked up the controllers and created a map that was free for all, but put the music on full blast. It was at this moment that the rest took interest in whatever the fuck I was doing. Richard decided to leave the house because he was very annoyed and wanted to play League of Legends. But me, Jimmy and Chuck started to play Halo. Chuck threw a fit because he thought that me and Jimmy were teaming up against him, but it's not true. He was just bad at the game. It was Jimmy's Xbox, so he was actually completely decimating both of us, even inebriated as he was. I was also getting my shit kicked, but I wasn't complaining like a little bitch. Instead, I was simply going for the easy target. Eventually, he also left the house, so when it was just me and Jimmy, we had a long conversation about what went wrong with the session and how metagaming is pretty bad, but also how me and Richard were legitimately bored because Chuck was just playing alone. I can't say that this sort of thing didn't happen again. Jimmy never got good at managing the party's outbursts or switching the spotlight and giving all our characters time equally. The problem got a little better when more people joined our games because then he insinuated a rule that if the members of the party wanted to split, it had to be in 2 roughly equally sized groups. That limited rogues from just going off and doing their own thing. Yeah, that's why rogues suck in D&D for the most part. Because most of the people who play them want to either seduce dragons, climb chandeliers, or go off and play their own game selfishly, you know. But there we go. At some point during the night, Jimmy called over another mutual friend of ours, and we spent the rest of the evening playing Halo, talking about life, and discussing interesting topics till the sun came up and I went home. I realised that this hobby nightmare just sort of fizzled out at the end there. It was a pretty nice evening, all things considered. Halo used to be a good game series. Playing it at Jimmy's house became a semi-regular thing that sort of replaced our regular D&D sessions for a while. The group eventually got back together again, but this time with me as the GM. But that's a story for another time. In fact, if I ever tell that one, it will have to come with several warning labels because it's kind of screwed up and not in a fun way. Anyway, I hope this was a fun read. If it's too long or rambly, please tell me so I can rewrite it a bit and trim the fat. I'm also going to look for more drawings, like I said, and see what memories they can stir up. Take care. Have a happy New Year's Eve. Cheers. Okay, that was really, really cool. Yeah. Again, man, this is literally... Even 18, 19, 20-year-olds should know better than playing this way. Do you know what I mean? You need to be able to be like, look, this could have been solved by the GM just going, okay, you want to go do cat burglaries? Let's roll for them, shall we? Let's roll for them. You know, what do you get in this house? Oh, it's an 18 out of 20. You get a trinket that's worth this amount of gold. What do you get in this house? You know what I mean? That could have been solved in 5 minutes, right? Again, this is somebody sticking to the rules verbatim and not having the balls to change them or just to, you know, do a bit for the people at his table. That's just me. Anyway, I hope you all had a good time. I will speak to you on Sunday, where we're going to be going over some more, another bit of a rebuild of another Legion, or I think we're doing the 11th Legion this Sunday, which will be quite cool. Alright? Alright. I love you a long time. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and I'll speak to you very, very soon. Alright? See you later. Have a good one. Bye now.